Hello there, it's time for me to talk about my home next action section. This is kind of a surprise because I didn't have a separate home next action section when I recorded my introduction to this series. I actually used to have my next actions for home in the same place I had my work next actions. So in the Dutch door section of my monthly planning. But the thing was that I tended not to do the home next actions before, the month was done. So, for example, in my March book, let's see, I still had home next actions in this one. So when I do a task, I mark it with a gold pen like this. And as you can see, I didn't really do that much. I've marked a few of these as done, but most of it I just didn't do. So having it in the front book, that is the monthly book that I switch out every month, is not a good idea because I'm not going to, I'll have to transfer all my home next actions every month, and that's not how I want to spend my life. So I decided to go back to an earlier way of doing things where I have a separate section for my home next actions. What is this? Is it coal? Never mind. So I have this separate section for home next actions. I have the same kind of tabs as I have for my work next actions. I might change them to make them more unique to home, but I'm not sure that's needed. So this tab at the top signifies the whole section, or I navigate to the section by, excuse me, by using that tab. So I come to the beginning of the next section, and then I use these to come to my contexts, which is husband, other people, check, find, gather, move, fix, brainstorm, creative, planner stuff, Google, computer, print, and errands in my village and in town. So these are a lot of context, and traditionally, I think in GTD, you had or were supposed to have context like phone, computer, errands, but I find that I need a more granular and sort of mood-based categorization. So my contexts are very tailored to me, and it's taken years and years and years to develop them to the point where they actually work. So the husband list is simply like an at list, things to bring up when we are in the same room, like when we talk at dinner or something. These are the things I'd like to bring up. Other people can be almost anything. It's just things I need to bring up with other people. It can be calling my doctor. It can be asking someone to come have a cup of coffee, or whatever. It has to do with other people. So check. That one is kind of vague, but it involves sort of looking for stuff, not online because that has its own list, the Google list, but for example, I've written, I need to check if we have, there's this series of graphic novels that we own, but we don't own all of them, and I would like to buy the ones we don't have for my husband's birthday. So I need to check whether or rather which ones we have. So that's kind of a check item that goes on the check context. A similar one, and I used to have these in the same context, but now I've decided to separate them because, and a lot of these are similar. The check, the find, gather and move contexts are very, very similar. They have to do with sort of finding and organizing stuff, but they are qualitatively different. They feel different. I can be in a checking mood, I can be in a finding mood, I can be in a moving mood, but I may not, I mean, I don't want to have all of them on the same list because those moods are not exactly the same. So that's why I've separated them. So find has to do with hunting for stuff. Where is that postcard I need to do this thing? Where are the screws for the toilet seat? You know, and most of the time I actually don't actively search for these things, but having them on the list keeps them fresh in my mind, so when I stumble on them while doing something else, I can recall that yes, I needed this, and you know, do whatever needs to be done with them. So gather, very similar again, but it has to do with making piles of things. For example, I need to mend some jewelry, so the first step is to bring all of my broken jewelry into a pile. And another project is to sort of clean out my closet, to give away old clothes that I'm not using, and the first step is to gather all my ugly dresses in one pile and then put them in a bag and throw them away or at someone who wants them. Moving stuff has to do with sort of carrying things around, big stuff, paintings and crates of books that I need to move from the attic to our new library, or you know, moving paintings from upstairs to downstairs where we're actually going to hang them one day, perhaps in some like 20 years or something. So that's very similar to gathering and finding and checking, but it's sort of more of a like sort of transportation vibe going on there. Fixing things has to do with, well, things that are broken or don't work that you need to sort of put an effort into, you know, fixing. Like for example, the what's it called, under the sink or the wash basin in the bathroom, it was clogged, so I needed to whatever you do, and I did that. Well done. Brainstorming has to do with just sitting around and thinking about a project and gathering ideas. Is what it sounds like, basically. Creative stuff has to do with crafting and writing and painting and drawing and those kinds of things. And this list, this context doesn't really work as intended, because creative things, creative work or projects, those are entirely mood governed and intuitive. So I never follow a list when I craft or write, but it's a way of not forgetting small ideas, like good ideas. For example, I've put that I want to mass make junk journals using my themed boxes where I've gathered stuff. And I won't go to this list and think, oh yes, I'm going to check this one off. I'm going to mass make things today. No, that's not how it works. But suddenly, when, you know, I see some, I don't know, unfinished junk journals lying somewhere in my craft room, and I just feel, I want to do this now, and then But having this here is kind of the same thing as the finding context, that sort of reading it again and again when I go through my context and just checking in with myself keeps it at the forefront of my mind, so that when I'm in a context room area where it might be relevant to remember this, maybe I do remember it. That's the goal anyway. Planner stuff usually has to do with prepping the next book. So here I had the daily list for April. I needed to prep. Yeah, so I just so I don't forget the things I need to do to prepare a new book, like for example cutting these Dutch doors, gluing in the trackers, that kind of thing. Sometimes, well, inking the pages and sometimes embellishing them. Googling is what it sounds like. Finding information online, basically. Computer, slightly different, because you can Google stuff on your phone or iPad, but some things I need to be on my computer to do. Like, for example, tidying up in my computer folders. That's something I do at irregular intervals. But that's something I can put on a list like this, or, well, I don't really know. Mostly when I actually need the computer, it has to do with work or with printing. But printing has its own list because the printer is in a different room, so I have to bring the computer there, and it's a hassle. So I want to do several printing tasks at once while I'm there. So that's why I have a separate list for it. And we come to the final spread where I've started to embellish, which is something I'm a bit apprehensive about. I'm not sure, because I talked in an earlier video about my project pages and how they need to be sort of pristine and structured and not embellished, because that stresses me out and just distracts me from, because I need this overview. But when it comes to my next actions, I think I might actually look at these pages more if they are embellished, because the project pages, I look at them anyway because I need the information on them. But the next actions are more like a bad conscience, like this is what you should do, so I don't look at them because they tell me what to do, and I don't like that. But if I've got these embellishments, it might be nicer just to flip through those pages, and then I see the tasks as I go. So I started doing that, and I think I will embellish all of the pages just to make them more attractive.